All right. Thank you so much,
That's
Rich. I want to welcome everyone to our panel on tribal economic development challenges and opportunities. We actually have an amazing panel, and I'm excited to be here today. With us, joining us today, we have Maria Dagar, who is the Executive Director of the Intertribal Council of Arizona. All right. She will be followed by Kevin Davidson, who is the Director of Planning for the Wallapai Nation. And then we're going to go a little bit to trying to do this in alphabetical order. And if my Parker High School taught me well, it's going to be Cody Gession, who is the Economic Development Specialist from San Carlos Apache Nation. And then we're going to go south to my good friend, Richard Gerhalva, who I haven't seen in a while, but it's good to be here. And I'm here in Tucson as well. So Richard is actually the CEO of the Economic Development Administration, Economic Development Authority for the Tohono O'odham Nation. So it's great to have you here, Richard, as well. And then also on our panel, we do have representation from the federal government, from the Economic Development Authority, the U.S. Department of Commerce, Cindy Petak. So I'm excited to have each of them here. We're going to spend a little bit of time. They're going to go in and just talk a little bit about themselves for 1 or 2 minutes. And then we're going to start off with some questions. And feel free to submit some questions. Gwen and I will be able to review those, and we'll ask those questions as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maria.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, and welcome to our panel. For many years, I worked in economic development, but for the past 6 years, I've had the honor of serving as the Executive Director of the Intertribal Council of Arizona. And so in my role, we serve 21 of 22 tribes in Arizona.
So the question I have for you, Maria, is, and it'll be for every panelist, this very first question. COVID has offered a lot of different challenges and obstacles, but what are some of the challenges and what are the opportunities you've seen that tribal nations can do when it comes to community and economic development?
Throughout this whole pandemic, we first of all went into emergency operations mode, and I have to say that the tribes in Arizona had a certain level of preparation that was really quite impressive, as far as having their emergency operations centers fully staffed and their points of contact fully staffed and aware of the immediate steps that they needed to take to start addressing the pandemic. Some of the areas of that were where we showed more vulnerable situation were around the types of economic development that tribes in Arizona tend to go toward. And so, for example, we're heavily involved in tourism here in Arizona. And so with tribes having so many investments in the tourism industry, gaming, hotels, restaurants, spas, these types of business operations did take a hit during the pandemic, and tribe leaders stepped up and made some very difficult decisions without a lot of national leadership or national guidance. And so tribal leaders came together and made the decisions to shut down their operations. People may think that that really only impacts the tribe itself, but you have to remember that our tribe, our casinos, they are many times the largest employers in the counties where they reside. And so the opportunities we saw were really how tribal leaders came together, stood shoulder to shoulder, made very difficult decisions without a lot of national guidance. And then we realized that we really need to start looking at some more long-term investments, perhaps tribal energy, energy development, some of the more longer-term investments, and you know, things like restaurants, hotels. They're very important, but they were very vulnerable during the pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we have Kevin. Kevin, would you like to say a few words of introduction and also answer the question?
Yep. Sure, indeed. This is Kevin Davidson, my tribal planning director. I've been out here for about 8.5 years. I have been in the planning profession for some 25 years. Although Willowpie Tribe did take a fairly good hit with the COVID event, we closed down operations at Grand Canyon Resort, which is the restaurant, the skywalk, the river runners, for about 2.5 months. We opened up in June, and still we've seen like a 70% decline in revenue over the last several months. In fact, the opportunity, though, is that we currently have in negotiation a solar power grant with DOE. And they're sending out a request to reduce the tribal match, and we can prove that we can reduce the tribal match in good faith, given the fact of our loss of revenue to make that $1.3 million match. So there's an opportunity there that we can probably get by with maybe 25% on the tribal match for this 1 megawatt solar array at Grand Canyon West. So going into energy, we've been working also on a power line to Grand Canyon West, some $15 million, 35 miles, 69 kV line. But the solar array is kind of coming in as a backup plan. And the solar array actually might be built first. Again, with the tribal match reduction request or opportunity with DOE, we can make that work. We also are trying to diversify. We realize that we put all of our eggs in one basket, the tourism basket. So we have some tribal entrepreneurs looking to do their own thing on the reservation. So we're entertaining some development in, shall we say, the hemp and cannabis world. So we're looking at that as an alternative to just the tourism trade at Grand Canyon West and here in Peach Springs. Did all that come through?
Thank you so much, Kevin. We're looking forward to seeing the solar renewable getting developed. All right, next up we have Cody.
Hello, this is Cody Gession from the San Carlos Apache Tribe. I'm the Economic Development Specialist here. Prior to this, I was working with in the field of procurement and offering technical assistance. As far as COVID for our tribe, what we ended up doing is we closed down as of March 2020 and reopened our casinos, our restaurants in mid-October. And as far as sustainability and looking towards long-term investments, we are going to diversify and going green, looking into solar and renewable energy.
Thank you. Richard?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to just do a quick introduction and also answer the question as well as what your tribal nation is doing to given these challenges and opportunities that COVID has presented to us?
Yes, I will. Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Grijalva, and I'm speaking to you from Sells, Arizona. And behind me is a map of the nation. To give you an example of what we have to deal with when it comes to economic development, if you went from east to west on the nation, and you were going 75 miles an hour, it would take you 4 hours to go from east to west. From north to south would be the same thing. We're bigger than the state of Connecticut. And we have a roughly 75 to 100 miles along the Mexican border. Economic development is very unique, and the challenges are very unique on the Tohono Nation. Rural economic development, more rural than you've ever probably faced. And so the nation came up a while back with a unique concept on economic development. And we were created, the Economic Development Authority, based upon this unique concept. We not only assist the various districts in the nation, which there are 11, and the nation itself and individuals, but we also run a business for the nation. We own shopping centers, office buildings. We have one in Queen Creek, veteran community outside of Phoenix. So we do a little bit of both. We offer assistance, and we also run our own business. So therefore, when the pandemic hit, we could not shut down. The nation shut down, but we could not because we're a business and we are subject to the things that go on in our real estate development. So we were open as the rest of the business was closed. That was a challenge in itself. Now, what a little bit about myself. I come from Tucson. I'm a fourth generation Tucsonian. So I drive to sales every day, and I've gone through 3 trucks so far, and I'm on my 4th. The fact that the pandemic has hit and the fact that we're meeting virtually in itself tells you about the situation and the problems we're facing. So I've been instructed to come up with a new plan, a new way of thinking, because once the pandemic is under control, it's not going to go away, but it's going to be under control. What's going to come up next? So they've asked me to look, and I believe that paradigm shifts are going to have to take place. I'm going to go back and look at my blueprints that I put together for strategic plans and rework them. Look at the paradigms that are ineffective, throw them away, and come up with more effective paradigms to handle the new situations that we're going to be facing. I believe the old ways of thinking are not going to be effective in my environment. The goals are still going to be the same, but the road to achieve those goals are going to be different. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at paradigm shifts.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard. Cindy, do you want to do a quick introduction and also answer the question as well?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Levi. First of all, Levi, I just want to thank you for fitting me into the panel today. I know it was last minute, but first and foremost, just to give a little bit background about myself, I am the new economic development representative for the state of Arizona, and I'm representing the Economic Development Administration. I have come here from the Federal Highway Administration. I worked in Washington, D.C. for a dozen years. And for a good amount of my career there, I became immediately engaged in the issues surrounding Indian country as it relates to our federal programs and federal funding, and ultimately ran the Office of Federal Lands Highway Tribal Transportation Program for about 7 years. So I've traveled extensively in Indian country, and in particular, I've spent a lot of time in Arizona. At some point in time, I was traveling 50% of the time, and much of it was here. So while I have really just moved to the state within the last 30 days, my orientation in Arizona is really through Indian country. My references are that. I've had the opportunity of working with the Intertribal Council, for example, and many of the tribes here. Part of what my goal is here today is to suggest, at least for me, COVID is an opportunity because it really is what brings me here. And I'd like to think it was an opportunity for all of us because it is the first time that the EDA has had a presence in every single state. And in that regard, I think what we're starting to see is that representation matters. Where we're most invested is where we see the resources. And in just the few months that I've been here, I've had the opportunity to begin to cultivate relationships such that we're starting to see now some tribal applications move before our investment review committee so that we can really start to see funding flow through Indian country in the state of Arizona. Obviously, we are a funding agency. We're a big provider of COVID relief funds. I've given a few presentations on what we're able to do as a grant-making institution. As Indian tribes, as tribal governments, you are eligible to receive 100% of the federal share. So I think that this is a good opportunity for all of us. Again, hopefully what I'm really here to do is start to establish those relationships and really starting to engage tribes one-on-one and perhaps start to talk about issues that are of interest to you to see how EDA can collaborate and really start to think about creative ways. As Mr. Grijalva said, this is an opportunity for a paradigm shift. Things aren't going to go back to the way they were. I'm not sure that any of us are really looking for that to happen anyway. So if we could just look at COVID as an opportunity and see how we could collaborate and partner to see how we could move the needle forward in some of the issues that are important to you. That is really of interest to me. My expertise is also in cultural and heritage tourism, and I know that is something significant here in Arizona. We've been very hard hit here. Tribes have been the hardest hit, whether you're talking about the economy or where we're talking about being hit by the pandemic, generally speaking. So I do want you to know that, but at the same time, I'm very much here to learn, and I'm really looking forward to working with everybody to do that. And so perhaps afterward, I'll be working with NAU to get a good contact list. I'm sure my contact information is provided here as well, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with you. Thank you, Levi.
Thank you. With that, we do have some questions. The very first one is will probably be for everyone in the panel. If you have an opportunity, feel free. Regarding this paradigm shift, what are you doing to support tribal entrepreneurship?
I guess I'll take that since I brought up paradigm shifts. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. We'll go Richard first, and then Maria.
Okay.
First of all, the philosopher George Bernard Shaw once wrote, "America and England are two countries separated by a common language." Key there is separated. And ED, it's the same thing. Economic development is all around. But if you ask 10 people in economic development, what is the definition of it, you'll get 10 different answers based upon your objective. My objectives, my goals are dictated by the charter that developed us. There was 3 goals, and they developed the EDA based upon that. So my objective is based upon those goals. Somebody that works for the federal government may have a different goals with their economic development. And so that's very hard, that when you go out into the community like I do to assist them, they have a different perspective of what they want. Some of it is immediate gratification based upon what the casinos produce. Economic development is not like that. It doesn't provide immediate things. So going out and determining what is the best way is complicated. It really is, because everybody has a different idea of how to achieve their economic goals. So my crystal ball, looking at the immediate future, once the pandemic is under control, is to become aware of what works and what doesn't work, and put that into a blueprint of measurable objectives to reach those goals. They have to be measurable. Too many people go out there and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it goes by the wayside for one reason or another. So people say it isn't going to happen. I'll give you an example of that. We have a shopping center out here in Sal's. When I first came aboard, we went to the communities and asked them what would they like us to do with the shopping center. A gentleman, an elder of the tribe, came to me and said, "Richard, I've heard your talks from different people for the last 5 years. I'm probably going to pass away before I see anything done that needs to be done." A year later, he came and shook my hand when we had the grand opening of the new shopping center. He said, "It can be done. If you listen, it can be done." So that taught me a lesson. Different perspectives of different people, but they all want the same thing. They want a measurable objective to be reached, not just to talk about, but to be reached. So my little crystal ball is putting together a blueprint with measurable objectives that they can hold me accountable for. They can point a finger at me and say, "You said you're going to do this and you didn't do it. Why not?"
Richard, Maria, or does anyone else have anything to add? We do have other questions as well.
I'll just quickly jump in and say, you know, as tribes and as tribal nations, we've been responding to federal policy for 200 years plus. And so, so much of what we can do economically has to do with federal policies that have regulatory control over some of the things that we might want to do or might want to try. And so I didn't mention earlier, but through the Intertribal Council of Arizona, which is a 501c3, and we operate federal grants, we have established a new sister organization, the Intertribal Association of Arizona, which allows us to advocate. And so through our tribal leaders, during this whole time, we've been advocating with federal agencies to remove some of the regulatory barriers, to help find ways to increase investment. I believe Kevin mentioned the reduction in the cost share with the Department of Energy, Office of Indian Energy. Those kinds of things take letters and campaigns behind the scenes to help promote. And so we switch back and forth between both organizations through our 501c3. We do have an Economic Development Administration grant, which is, and we have COVID monies that will allow us to spend the next year working with tribes in Arizona to develop tribal economic development resiliency plans. And so we feel that that's going to help diversify economies. And then lastly, I'll just say that Cody and I worked many years ago together at the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development. The founder of that organization, he's passed away now, but David Lester, he used to teach us that the key for economic development on tribal lands really is entrepreneurship and individual Indian-owned businesses. And so there's training. We need to have more federal agencies partner with tribes, and as well as local communities, counties, municipalities, and the state to foster entrepreneurship on tribal lands.
Olive, oh, sorry. If I could, when a entrepreneur comes to the tribe, basically I help them guide them through their business development plan and the review. And then sometimes when they have to go to council for that presentation, it kind of helps if I'm there with them to help make that pitch to council, because not everyone is smooth in front of the tribal council, particularly if you're a member of the tribe. So on occasion, I find that some members are intimidated by the council action because they have to determine whether we should move forward or not with the business plan. And if they ask for seeded money, they better have a very detailed business plan to say what's my return on investment like. So myself, the office here, and the Tribal Environment and Review Commission review the business plan prior to going to tribal council. So that's how we help them get that far. Over the years, I've only seen like 2 people go to council because basically they get to a point where they don't have enough knowledge, enough educational background to proceed beyond point A. So again, knowledge and trying to instill some education into the entrepreneurs is important. So I usually refer them also to MCC, Mojave Community College, for a little bit more on the primer to develop to develop a business plan. So that's what we do here.
Go ahead, Cody.
Just to quickly add how we're doing our tribal entrepreneurship, what we've been doing to push our small businesses forward is providing business technical assistance here within the tribe locally, and then utilizing our local resources like our small business development centers out of Eastern Arizona College, or any procurement technical assistance centers, whether they're interested in government contracting or maybe just wanting to be a vendor locally within the counties or maybe the state. And so we're going out there and we're pushing our small businesses forward and utilizing those local resources. Thank you.
All right, we do have some more questions, so I'm going to get to them, and we'll try to get through them all. The FCC has released wireless spectrum rights to tribal nations as part of a strategy to increase access to the internet. What plans do you have, and how does the availability of the wireless spectrum stimulate economic development in your nation and communities? Kevin, I'm going to call on you because I know you've worked on this.
Yeah, just in the last year, we had some support from NAU. The Mural Net came out to help us do a pilot program for 25 homes. We used a CBRS or 3.5 gigahertz on our first study. During this time, we've also applied to the FCC and received our 2.5 gigahertz license, I think about 15 days ago. We just changed from CBRS 3.5 to 2.5. I still have about 25 people on this pilot program now. We applied for a BIA NTBG grant. We received that grant to do a reservation-wide study for 1 million acres of land. And the benefit here is that the EMS department has also received some CARES Act money to deploy a 911 system. And they morphed the contract, go from 911 to a community-wide internet, which is going to be on 2.5. So we're looking at multiple approaches here. The scope of the EMS, the contract for 2.5 is only in town. So I'm still going to proceed with the NTBG grant and look at the reservation wide for 1 million acres. We have, again, a very rural area, and it's out of Grand Canyon West. It's up at the youth camp, up to the Supai. So we have to figure out how to bring the 911 and internet to 1 million acres of land. Most of that is rural in nature. So getting the help of the CARES Act and EMS and NTBG and Mural Net, we're moving ahead. Also, we have offers from WECOM to bring the broadband from Kingman out here. They received a USDA Reconnect grant last year, so we have fiber optic coming along Route 66. And we're currently in negotiations with AT&T on the buried fiber optic cable, which goes to the reservation since 1990. So there's a lot of opportunity to tap in and receive more broadband here. The little pilot program has been working fairly well. People are doing at-home learning now, and they've been maxing out the 50 megabits per second for 25 users, which is only like 2 megabits per household. But that's already rapid speed. But the current system of Frontier on DSL is about 0.5 megabit per second. So we are happy to have our support from MuralNet, and we're looking to expand it in the future with our NTBG grant and what EMS is doing for us now.
Next question. What can be the blueprint for tribes and tribal businesses?
Is that for me?
For anyone on the panel. Go ahead, Cindy.
I was going to ask if this was in regard to broadband, but I wouldn't mind speaking a little bit about what EDA is doing in the area of broadband development.
Please do.
Okay. That is probably the single hottest issue that has come out of this pandemic for all of us, is that technology is really what's going to move us forward with regard to economic diversification strategies and access to it. And how do we get there? So we're working very closely with the Department of Commerce's NTIA, which is the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, to really kind of get together and grapple with this issue in Arizona. We're going to be holding a symposium in March, and we're going to be developing a specific tribal track so that we can really discuss this in context of the needs in Indian country, which we know are very different than simply rural Arizona and very different than urban Arizona. So I wanted to put that, and also our EDA grant funds. In order, broadband development is an eligible expense. I wanted to put that out there. And in order to compete for broadband funds, you must have a broadband strategy or broadband plan. So we also fund those, and a strategy grant just to see, not just the development of broadband, but either how do we pivot from what we were doing before, or how do we increase economic capacity as we move through the pandemic toward a post-pandemic environment. So those strategy grants, Maria, that you spoke about are really critical. The feasibility of developing broadband in context of where you'd like to grow and how you'd like to grow are all things that are eligible for our EDA funding and are very consistent with our EDA investment priorities. So at some point I could speak to that in detail, but I did just want to put that out there. We also do have the ability, as Kevin mentioned, there are other federal agencies that engage in broadband development too. And through our economic development integrators, we do have the capacity to bring all of those agencies to the table together to discuss how we might implement something for you. So your plan is cohesive, and you essentially have all the funders at the table. And that also includes banks. The Federal Reserve is another funder, philanthropical institutions. You know, we can kind of be the central point of contact to bring all of those folks to the table, if that's something that you'd be interested in having us do.
Thank you. Going back to the question about what can be the blueprint for tribes and travel businesses. Richard, I know you already touched on this a little bit. Do you care to expand?
Sure. I don't think there's a blueprint for each. Let me rephrase that. There's a blueprint for an overall direction, and it has to be measurable. I've been involved in economic development off and on for a long time. I also ran my own business, and small businesses are unique. They're unique in their approach. They're unique in the way they make profit. And so there can't be one solution for everything. For example, out here in the Tohono Reservation, we're spread out. So our marketing and looking at whether a business will succeed or not depends upon many factors. We actually work with individuals and districts and the nation in putting together business plans. So a lot of them come to us based upon Highway 86, which runs through the nation. And they look at that, well, there's a market. But looking outside the box, which I really believe we have to do that as soon as the pandemic is under control, is looking at other marketplaces for small business. For example, I was just talking yesterday to an individual that is out in the Western District, far away from what you would consider the marketplace. And we were talking, and I said, and he says, we cannot, my district can't start businesses. And I said, sure you can. You just have to look outside the box. And I said, look at the resources you have. And you have lots of mesquite trees. He says, well, we can't cut down mesquite trees. I said, no, but you have a lot of them that are already down and they're sitting there. And if you've ever seen mesquite wood finished off, it's beautiful. It's a hard wood. It's beautiful. Sometimes they interlay turquoise and things in it. Just beautiful wood. And I said, why don't you gather those that are available and let me help you, and we'll market those. And we'll start off with just cutting boards for kitchens. People now, because of the pandemic, are used to kitchens, and we can make some beautiful cutting boards. And now you're a manufacturer, you're a distributor, you're transportation, and you can give all these jobs to individuals within your villages and within the district, and they can learn how to market, they can learn how to price, they can learn how to manufacture. And I said, I'll have to even take you to a sawmill that does this already. But you can manufacture, you can do all these things and teach people how to do them. And he says, I never thought of that, using the existing resources and thinking of something other than just retail sales. And I said, so Monday, let's get started. Gather some people together. We'll jump in the car and we'll go down to Carmen, Arizona, where there's a huge sawmill that does nothing but produce mesquite wood products. And they'll be glad to help you out. So that's how we can work with people, by looking outside the box and looking at measurable objectives, but keeping in mind, one size does not fit all.
If I could just jump in.
Yes, please.
So what we've really noticed during this entire pandemic is that it not so much disrupted our economies as it accelerated our economies and our plans and our thoughts about what we would be doing. We're, you know, the Intertribal Council of Arizona is not a tribe. We are a tribally controlled organization, but even our own buildings, 1 year old, and we couldn't, you know, get online with more than 2 or 3 people in one room because we were being kicked off. And so we had to work to get new fiber optics installed in our buildings. And so things that we were planning to do 3, 4, 5 years from now, like have all of our in-person training online, we're doing that now. We had to pivot and do this now. And so this is replicating throughout our tribes. But what we found really still, there are many federal policies that kind of limit what happens on tribal lands. And so tribes in the, you know, I guess around 1970s, tribes shifted towards self-determination and determining their own futures. And so we just would like to see that really expand, where tribes are taking control and deciding for themselves what will be the best blueprint forward. They move forward. And I think everybody, all of our panelists touched on the need for partnerships. We have also seen that there are just a few rare examples of where tribes are joint venturing. In other words, tribes from different places from across the United States forming business partnerships and going into business together. And so we'd like to see a lot more of that happening as well. And so we'll be working to facilitate some of those types of conversations. And I think Richard touched on the need for even manufacturing. So when the pandemic hit and there weren't enough of the PPE supplies, we had conversations with our Arizona delegation, Senator Sinema, Senator McSally, Governor Ducey. We brought together all of these types of representatives to speak with our tribal leaders directly. And we did discuss this, you know, tribes in Arizona are uniquely positioned for manufacturing, light manufacturing. They have the land base. And so we'd like to really work with federal agencies, partnership to help provide some of the training, technical assistance, and funding opportunities to help facilitate some of this moving forward in different diverse areas.
Thank you. And just to add on that, just a couple of things. Richard, one of the things that, you know, talked about mesquite wood, Gwen knows this, about 2 or 3 months ago, I actually took on a new hobby where I grew up at in Parker in the valley there. We had a mesquite tree that split and I went and trimmed it all down and I turned pins out of it. And I think I gave Gwen a pin from my own home. So I think there's a story behind that, especially using, see, there's the pin right there that I made. So I think there's opportunities of unmet needs when we look around at what are our assets, what are our values within our own area. And when you look at it differently through entrepreneurship, I think that springboards opportunities for business. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I do want to give a plug to NAU and CAIAD, where Gwen currently is at now. Last month or 2 months ago, she teamed up with San Carlos Apache Nation, and they had a business plan competition. And Gwen, actually, through their program, they have a foundation that they were able to provide some seed money for the winners. I don't know the results of it, but I'm sure it was a great event because Gwen puts on great events. All right. Yeah. Hey, we got 10 more minutes, and there's another comment. Cindy, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of just to amplify what Maria and Richard have been saying in terms of business opportunities and not one size fitting all. But the opportunities that exist and the access to information and data and how critical that really is. I think if I've heard 2 words more during this pandemic, it's like adapt and pivot. And in order to respond to consumer demand in the marketplace, it's that really that data and information that becomes so critical to see how can we respond or how businesses can respond to the need. And we know that the need has changed greatly overnight with regard to this pandemic. So, and we did mention federal partners, and of course, we're right there at the table. I also wanted to mention the state of Arizona and 2 entities that I've been working with, and that is the Arizona Office of Tourism and their Recovery and Resiliency Plan, and the data that they have with regard to visitor profile analyses and how the nature of travel has changed and what kind of an opportunity there is in Indian country, because it's a perfect fit. You know, what people want to do right now is to really be where you are. and to experience what the experiences that you have, and what are the gaps and the opportunities there, and how do we identify, train, and place folks in the hospitality industry. And again, that's where EDA can come in to help through funding, whether it's a feasibility study, market research, accelerators and incubators. We can do all of that. And also with the Arizona Commerce Authority, what are the top sectors? How are those top business sectors performing? How are they shifting? How are they changing? How are they pivoting? And with access to that type of data, you do have the ability to really tailor make a business strategy, whether it's for an independent business or an entrepreneur or a tribal enterprise itself. And we're kind of seeing a lot of that come in too, in reviewing some of the applications that are coming in. Some of these ideas, they're brilliant. I would never have thought of them, but I don't know that a lot of us would have thought of them this time last year. So again, I would suggest that this does give us a lot of opportunity to be creative, and in order to be the most creative, we need access to that data. So there again is where I think we see the collaboration and the partnerships and getting the right folks at the table to either provide the information or to, pay to get that information. And again, that's where we can help collaborate as well.
Okay, thank you. So we have one final question, and we each have about 60 seconds to answer. What are tribes doing to attract businesses to tribal nations? We'll start off with Maria. We'll just follow Maria, Cindy, Kevin, Cody, and Richard will be our concluding speaker. You got 60 seconds. Make it count.
Well, so we're not a tribe, but we are an organization, a tribally controlled organization. And one of the things that we do at the Intertribal Council is we work in partnership with our 21 tribes to help market their venues for events. We have 68 staff people. Before the pandemic, they were traveling all over the country, some even all over the world, and they would be in different settings where they could provide an opportunity to recommend a tribal facility on tribal land for a national conference, an international conference. And we really saw a marked increase in these events taking place on tribal lands. And so we work with tribal leaders to help them market their events. We also market their venues to our colleagues nationally, internationally, to hold events. And so anything we can do to promote business on the level that is appropriate for our organization and within our relationship with tribal leaders, those are some of the things that we've been doing.
Thank you. Cindy, you're up. 60 seconds.
Okay, quickly. So obviously I work with some tribal businesses. I can't speak from personal experience, but some of the creativity that I have seen is the introduction of smart technology into the manufacturing sector. That both allows tribes to increase production and increase the business opportunity, but also adds a resiliency component so that you're not necessarily seeing people work side by side, but then you also have the availability of, or the creation of high-skilled, high-paying jobs as well down the line. So that's kind of that's what I have to offer.
Kevin.
Yeah, we have established the Hualapai Tribal Utility Authority, and we are bringing power and broadband to the reservation. We've also reduced our cost of doing business with the reservation fee from $50,000 to $4,000. Just make your pitch to the tribal council on your business. $50,000 upfront non-refundable pitch fee is kind of an inhibitive device, if you will. So we cut that down to $4,000 to make your pitch to tribal council. And the business can also ask for a waiver on that fee if the tribe would like to consider that waiver of the $4,000 upfront non-refundable doing business with the tribe fee. So when I first came, it was $50,000 and people just would hang up the phone. So we reduced our cost to present to the council. That covers their time and also the staff time to make the presentation with the applicant. So that's what we're doing here.
Cody.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say to maximize all of your local resources, whether it be your small business development centers, your procurement technical assistance centers, all of your local resources, your schools, all of your local small businesses, your chamber of commerce, and then most importantly, your local economic development sector of your tribe. They'll be able to assist you and move your business forward.
Richard.
Remember, we deal mostly with districts, 11 districts. and those districts. So it's very simple. Identify opportunities, reduce risks, and above all else, make sure they're going to earn a profit.
Thank you so much. Well, we have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to ask a final question. What roles do you see the universities playing with your tribal nations or tribal organizations or groups?
I'll just jump in and say the Intertribal Council of Arizona has a number of partnerships with our state university here in Arizona and other states, and they're a great source of expertise, training. They have a lot of resources and around technology that can be very useful for tribes. And so we appreciate our partnerships with NAU, U of A, ASU, and other universities because of the expertise and access to technology and lots of other resources that we can bring to our tribes.
Levi, since you're working for the U of A now, I will be contacting you to take me to lunch, and we'll discuss how we're going to get involved.
Hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Your chairman's going to be on campus later on today for a flag ceremony. But Richard, I look forward to getting meeting with you. I'm down here in Tucson a couple days a week as well. So, and there was a question about the email contact information of the panel. I believe, Gwen, you can send that out to all the participants. Okay. Kevin, Cody, Cindy, do you have any final words?
Well, I'd like to thank Chad Hamill at NAU for helping us out on the MuralNet link for our broadband here. That was one of the pivotal points to move towards the broadband deployment. So I can MuralNet and Chad Hamill at NAU. Thank you, guys.
All right.
And also with Native American People's Technical Assistance Office, and then NAU Center for American Indian Economic Development, ASU as well as U of A have been instrumental in assisting our tribal businesses and promoting their entrepreneurial spirit.
I just want to say again, thank you, and I look forward to working with the universities to continue to build relationships with tribes in Arizona and see how we can move things forward for everyone. And thank you. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Richard, next week, we're going to go get some meat. All right.
Ron, I hope you do.
Tell us where.
Accountability. Accountability.
Yeah. You're going to hold me accountable. Let's make it happen.
Nice
All right.
meeting you.
Thank you all. Enjoy the conference. Enjoy the economic summit. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.